I'm heading home from the 26th to the 30th.
I went to one of the ones at 1 in the morning. We left. We were at 1 in the morning.
You went on a walk at 1 in the morning?
Yeah, I had work the next day.
Do you feel it? The tangibility of here and now? The sense that my world is yours? Dziga Vertov, emerging from a silent era used to expressionism and contextual messages on screen, was so afraid of the film being reviled by the public that he prefaced it with a warning. Without the use of intertitles, without the help of theatre. Devoid of conventional narrative form, Vertov's film cast off the meta aspects that reminded viewers of what they were watching. It's quite unlike the realism we're experiencing now, as I hold my phone to read my lines and explain to you how realism is mentioned 179 times in Baldwin and Thompson. What is realism then? Nicassus, in his paper on empirically defining realism, proposes 5 modes of its creation, which I've paraphrased here. In the first of these, he proclaims how films can make a reference to the real world, or an idea of the real world, subsequently drawing upon these contexts. The death of Winifred's dog and Tony Urban draws upon the grief and loneliness of such an event in real life, deepening the audience's connection with the character. The guilt Winifred experiences when he accidentally gets an oil field worker fired is heightened by the antagonistic undertones of big oil and corporate greed brought forth in the film's setting. In the second mode, Nicassus outlines that realism is dependent on the film's relationship with a viewer's social domain, or subjective reality. This is what we normally call relatability. The establishment of Thelma as a subjugated housewife and Louise as an overworked waitress are roles in society that, if not accepted, were commonly and widely understood at the time. The emotional empowerment that many women felt watching the film is as a result of Thelma and Louise's transformation in which they claim ultimate control of their lives. Nicassus's third mode acknowledges how films fit with other models of social reality. Realism can be invoked through comparisons to other realist texts, or through the contrast to the seemingly unreal. Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men contradicted contemporary Hollywood cinematic style in giving the camera greater freedom of movement and physicality. Shaky and handheld, with a mind of its own and shown in extended long takes, Cuarón imitated documentary and news footage characteristic of the present refugee crisis. The blood splatter on the lens connects the reality of the camera on a film set with the fictional atrocities it depicts. The fourth mode describes realism as temporal, an aspect of cinema that can be reinterpreted as cultures and audiences change. Nosferatu is a film which, though unchanged, lost its realism over time. The rats which follow Count Orlok would at the film's original screening in 1922 have invoked a terrifying image of the Spanish flu in its German audience. Having killed almost 100 million people only a few years prior, today's image of rats as mildly annoying is very different. The connotations of death which supposedly follow Count Orlok are therefore much less convincing to a contemporary audience. Finally, Nicassus invokes the relationship between film texts, their production, and their reception. What he describes could be genre. The documentary medium is a perfect example, and Capadia's Amy being one specific. Amy is comprised almost entirely of archival or real footage, alongside a few first-person interviews. Promoted as a true story, the audience expectation for realism exists before the movie begins. What they receive is much less certain. Capadia's power as a filmmaker to influence interpretation is limitless. The documentary was pitched and partially funded by Amy's record label, and this vested interest invokes questions over whether her portrayal as a prodigy who tragically got caught up with the wrong people is overly sympathetic. The truth, then, is that not even documentaries can reliably represent reality. Seal maintains that the medium is fundamentally indifferent to realism, that it is merely a blank space to be utilised. Realism is temporal, dependent on external context, and fundamentally an act of interpretation. Nicassus's contrived criteria, alongside Seal's disconnection of realism and medium, show that realism is not an aspect of film form, but merely a feeling of truth. As film is fundamentally a subjective mediation of its creator, to call it realist thus erroneously implies that it is the truth. Cavell outlines that films reproduce reality, not by literally presenting us with the world, but by permitting us to view it unseen. That is to say, a real film is not a film. And